Hello, Ken Spriggs here with part 2 of my Moebius 2001 Space Station V build. A lot of good progress on this kit, including the lighting for the outer ring, beginning of the lighting for the docking bay. But I'm also working on, and I'll be showing here, my little space clipper, which I think turned out really, really cool. So let's go ahead and take a look.
All right, so I'm picking up where I left off in the last video. So I'm going to be attaching together now the two sides of the completed ring, outer ring. I did want to point out one more thing because I was curious about it myself. So the instructions are very, very complex, especially when you get into the construction ring, and I'm not even sure how many pages, but it's pretty thick. There's a lot of pages. But you want to read these. I was looking over and scanning ahead, especially when you get to the construction parts. There are so many parts, and they have to be done in a certain way. Lou Del Meso's already pointed out a particular issue that he saw that was confusing, and he gave us the correct information on it, so we'll be talking about that later in the build. But what I wanted to point out is you want to be sure to read everything and carefully look at what you're doing. A lot of this has to do with orientation of their various parts and how they're supposed to go. And this is one particular thing that I've noticed, and I was wondering myself. So both sides of the rings have these little, looks like pin connectors, but there's nothing corresponding on the other side of it. And so I was looking through the instructions, and what these are for is if you want to use the display stand that it comes with the kit, which I'm not going to do, they call these two blind posts. You need a 3mm drill, and basically all you're going to do is you're going to just drill out from inside one of the sides, because obviously the four sides are the same, just to make sure you're oriented correctly. And you're going to pick two of them on this, and there's also one on the back construction ring, in which then you would put some posts for the base into it. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, you can see the complexity of these instructions, just how involved it is. Oops. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So you have these four pieces that go onto the base, and they have a little nub sticking out. Those will go into that part. So it goes in behind, so two go into the front, that's obviously the part you want facing you. One goes into the back, and it lines up with these. So that's how you would display it. It's actually quite a nice feature. I like it a lot, because a lot of times, most models, they will put a hole into the model that's made for the attachment for the stand. And if you don't want to use that, or you take another route, you have to go back and fill it in and do that. This way you don't have to do anything. Only if you want to use the stand, then you would take the extra step of drilling these out. And they're on both sides, so whatever side you end up orienting onto it, that's what you would do. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get this together. Let me put this together, and I'll show you the nice design of this. All right, so they designed this very well. As I said previously, there's a seam here and on the other side where the two halves fit together, but it's not really noticeable at all. It looks natural. It seems to match up with the other parts. So as far as the face of this, you can't tell that there's a seam. Only on the inside of the ring and the outside of the ring. But there are parts covering that. These right here. You have these long ones for the inside. There's four of those, and you have these shorter sections go on the outside, and they go right down into the groove that it makes, so there won't be any seams at all, and they actually are keyed in, so you have these odd connections, so they're keyed in correctly, so they go in, and they're identical. There's just four sets of this sprue, so these two parts are the same, this part's the same, you just repeat them around it. So this is really, really good way to do it. And then all I have to do is, these are already together, I'll just go along the seam on the inside and outside with my Plastrek Bondine and get it all glued together. I'm not going to worry about any of the pin connectors inside. It's not really necessary. I might just throw on a little bit of my real quick. Sorry about that. Just right here. Just their thicker cement. So I may do that just to give it some extra hold. But this thing's going to be nicely and solidly glued together. Not only are the inner and outer seams glued, but there's going to be panels, of course, like I said, glued on. I probably will use this for those parts to get more drying time. This stuff dries really quick, and the ones on the outside. So this whole thing's going to be solid when we're done. But let me go ahead and get that together. All right, so I completed the ring with the outer parts and the inner parts. And so before I finish putting it together, I'm going to put the spokes together with the front hub. But before I do that, I went ahead and put down all of the window masks from Aztec Dummy, from Lou Del Mesa. I believe I counted 170, and that's just on this side. I still have to do the other side, which has the exact same number. So quite a bit tedious. Probably took me about an hour and a half to 2 hours. I got a little bit of a flow going. Basically, what I would do is use my X-Acto to peel it off, tuck it down into the square, and they're very deep. Make sure it's centered. I do like a section, and then I'd come back with a toothpick and then put that down in there and just run it around and seal it in around the edges so it's in there nice and solid. Because I want to get all these in. I was thinking initially of painting this first before attaching it, but I think what I'm going to do is get all of the spokes on and connect them to the hub. So what I did was I got the hub together, the main part of it. I painted some silver, basically. Actually, it's called chrome, Krylon chrome, but it's just silver. And I painted that first because that light blocks pretty well. Then I went back over with some Krylon flat black, which I really like this flat black. And the smaller cans, it's weird. The bigger cans aren't the same, but this is almost like a satiny, but it's very nice. Goes on nice and smooth. Doesn't hide any detail, which I want to make sure it doesn't hide on the ring here. So really only the ring and then this part with the docking bay on the finished side are going to need to be really super light blocked because they have lights, of course. This is the only part with lights. The main part, in the middle of the hub and the other side, there are no lights at all. So I don't have to worry about those being light blocked. But I will go over everything with the black at least. So I'm doing the lighter grays over that to bring it up to the right color I want. So it all looks uniform. So we'll work on that once I get this half done. So I'm going to let this sit for now. Tomorrow I'll go to the other side. This took, like I said, about an hour and a half to 2 hours to get all of these on there. I got all the end panels. And what I did, and it doesn't really say in the instructions, but all of these panels on the outside are the same. And then they fit into a little lip. So these are easy to do. They only go one way. The ones on the inside, there's 4 of them. You could put them either way, but I tried to match them up so that they were all going in the same direction, going around. You're really not going to notice it, that the detail repeats. but I wanted to keep them kind of uniform. The ones on the outside, I mean, I could have reversed them all the other direction, but it really doesn't matter. Either way, they still fit in. It's like a tongue and groove. So they have to all fit together like that and glue them all around. And of course, I have my light on so you can see. I'll take that off for a second. Okay. It's hard doing that with one hand. There we go. Okay. So you can see the little masks. Super, super tiny. But definitely worth it. I highly recommend using this from Blue Del Miso Aztec Dummy for the simple fact that, you know, you could cut out little pieces of tape yourself, but this tiny and to get them to be this accurate, I mean, it was tedious enough just picking each of those off and putting them down and tamping them down. If I had to go and cut them out, that would have been maddening. That would have been a whole lot more insane. So definitely recommend using that to do the windows. And he also has the masks, as I showed in my previous video, for the docking bay, which I'll be working on at the same time. So, okay. So let me get this. I'll get this other side done, and then I'll get the spokes connected. I did figure out too that, well, especially with the wires that I'm using, because you have a lot of connector pins inside of there, it's really hard to fish those through. So I glued together 3 of them, but I left one of them apart. So what I can do is I can put the wires down into it, glue it around the wires, and then connect it up into the station. And then those all go into the hub right here. All right. So I'll get all of this together. Then I can work on the interior of the docking bay. And then these wires will be coming through. I'll just tape them out of the way so they're ready to go when I need them to. So, okay. All right, so that was a time lapse of me completing this entire half of the wheel. Took me about 30 minutes, a little bit longer to put them all in. What I want to do is show you get a close-up. Find an area that's not done, of course. Okay. And just kind of show you on one of them, just to show the process that I'm doing. So you want to get a new X-Acto knife blade so it's nice and pointed and sharp. Sorry, I'm gonna have to try to look at it and do it in the camera at the same time. So first you lift up the edge. Sorry, like I said, I'm trying to keep in camera but doing it. Then I use my thumb to tack it onto the end of the X-Acto blade. And then what I do, make sure I'm picking one in camera, is I go ahead and just kind of stick it onto it, and it usually sticks on pretty well, and then I position it with the blade. And then I use the tip just to lightly press down a few spots to get it to be where it needs to be. It's just kind of tucked in there. Then I take a toothpick, and at first I press again, and then I go around it a little bit. hard to see in the camera. And then I go around the edges with the toothpick just to get it all sealed in around there. So pretty straightforward. It's just time consuming doing each and every one, but I've got it down pat where I'll hold this in one hand, pick them off, stick them on, do a whole section, and then go back at the toothpick and finish it up. So I will go ahead and finish the other half of the ring, and then I'll be ready to go ahead and start gluing on the spokes and the center hub. All right, so I was debating about getting this attached like I just did because I still have to put wires, LED strips on the inside of this. So I was kind of test fitting it, and I realized something that I did foolishly. Do not put these parts onto these before putting them together. Do them afterwards, because they go all the way down to the hub and they just will not work. This connection is tight, very, very tight, but it works great. So it's kind of funny because they tell you when you put it together, make sure that it's straight 90 degrees. You don't have a choice. Even without these, putting all four of these in is really tight because this ring is solid and it does not give at all. So when I put these together, there was just no way. I mean, I can get a side one on because it's going in that direction, but they're just playing off of each other and they are super tight. And once it's together, it's straight and they are solid and it's not going anywhere. I mean, you still have to glue it, but you know. So what I did was, because there are 4 other ones for the other side, I went ahead and rebuilt 3 more. And even with just this one, it kept pressing against these 2 little parts and bending them, and because you have to kind of twist it and get it in there and press it down. It's just really, really difficult. So don't do that. Don't put these on ahead of time. The other ones that I already built, they should be fine on the other side because there is no solid ring to press against it. There's just individual sections, so they should be fine on that side. But wait until you get them together and then go ahead and glue these on. So I want to go ahead and get those in place. Now that they're together, I'm not taking them back apart. Here's the wires coming through for the ring. I started painting the docking bay. Started light blocking it, putting the vinyl mass on it and light blocking it, and then I'll be able to fit that into here. And there's not a lot of play in here either. There's enough for a light strip, but it's a pretty tight fit. So all right, let me go ahead and get these on, and that'll finish up this ring right here. So I'm working on the space clipper, and I'm going to be going for the iconic poster image that I just showed a moment ago from the film. We never actually see the clipper next to the docking bay. We see it from behind coming towards it, but we never actually see them together. Probably because they didn't have an in-scale clipper. All the images of the clipper were the very large model of the clipper that they had filmed and then composited in with the station. And if they had shown it in front of the station, they would have had to mat around it. And that's when, anytime it's up against like a lighter background, you're going to be able to see the matte lines. It's going to make it more obvious. When it's in space and it's dark, it's not as obvious, and they can get away with it a lot more. That's just my guess. But we never actually see it in the film. But we do see the iconic poster where it's blasting out of the station, and you see the exhaust behind it. So that's the look I'm going to be going for. So this is the kit version of the clipper, very tiny. So, and it's okay. It's not bad, really. Not a ton of detail, of course, is something this scale. But what I'm using is I have the fantastic plastic version of the station, which I didn't build, which I don't know if I ever will. It's a lot harder. The rings are all solid resin, so you really can't light it. You could light it, but you'd have to hollow them all out. The back construction ring is all photo etch, would be very difficult to work with and put together. But a really cool kit, but now that they have the styrene one, I don't see me ever building that. But theirs came with 3 different sizes of the clipper. This real small one, which is pretty much the same as the one the kit has. This middle-sized one, and then this little bit larger one. So I went with the larger one, and I think it looks accurate to the poster. And again, we never see them together, so I don't know how they determined the size of the clipper in comparison to the station. And I just think this one's too small in order to look how I want it to look. In addition, mine's going to be leaving the station. So what I did was I cut off the very end of it, and I used this brass rod, and I thinned down the end of it, drilled a hole into the back of the clipper, and glued it in place. So that's in there nice and solid, and it's nice and straight. And I painted the clipper. Let me get a closer look at that. It's pretty nicely detailed. You see the little windows there on the sides, the engines, the bottom of it. Pretty nicely done. So I put some darker colors on it first, some neutral gray, and then I put on some insignia white, which brought it up, but it was still a little too gray. I wanted to stand out apart from the station, which is going to be gray. This isn't the final gray. This was a test part. This is going to be on the back side where the mounting steel tube is going through. But I wanted this to be a contrast to the gray that the station's going to be. And it'll be a little bit lighter. The station will be lighter than this. Not quite that dark. Also on this one, I painted it with silver first, then black, which I'm not going to do on the rest. It gives me a problem with the black interacting with the metallic, so I don't really want to do that. But what this is going to do is, this will go back through the bay. And I have the lights in the bay masked off, or the light panels, and I painted it. I don't have it glued together yet, I just have it taped for now. But you can see how those light panels are gonna glow through. So I don't have it completely done yet, but I put in some light strip just to test it. And that's all that I'm going to do, is just have a light strip surrounding the inside of this ring. It makes it a snug fit, but I think it should work and do what I want. I've already tested it and it looked pretty good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap some lights around this very thin light. Let me get the light pack. So I got these from Evan Designs. It's an LED string, cool white, and they are, I believe they're nano lights. I'm not sure, but they're very, very thin. And then it's a strand of 12 in one strand, and they're very thin. Let me find them here. Okay, 1 second. Okay, here they are. And I just have them onto a 9-volt battery. And because the rest of this is run by 12 volts, I wanted to make sure that these were rated to be 12 volts, which they are. Okay. So they're very tiny. So what I want to try to do, and we'll see if they work or not, is to wrap them around this and then put some cotton over it to give it the exhaust effect. We'll see if that works or not. If not, I'll just go with the cotton and not have them lit up. I'm not necessarily that worried about this lighting up, but if I can make it happen, I can. But this will definitely be the approach I'm going to do as far as having the clipper coming out of the station and having that iconic look. So, all right. So let me show you one more thing here that I've been working on that I think is going to be really, really cool as well. All right. So in the movie poster, you can clearly make out on the paw of the space clipper flying past the little blue Pan Am circle and the little Pan Am wording. You can actually read it on it. It's pretty tiny, but I really wanted to kind of get that on here. So I went online, I found some images of the Pan Am logo. There's actually 3 different. You have the blue Pan Am that goes on the side, the back. You have the big Pan Am that goes on the bottom of the wings, and you have the Pan American logo, which goes along the side of the fuselage. So I put them into a Word document, shrank them down to a bunch of different sizes, as you can see, and then I printed it on decal paper. Upside down. Very, very cool. What I'm going to end up with is the smallest ones, of course. So these ones here. I mean, you can't really read Pan Am on the very smallest, but you can tell what that is, and you can see like the little concentric circles on it. These Pan Ams you can read just fine, which will go on the bottom of the wings. And then even though super tiny, you can tell that says Pan American. And that was as small as I could make that in Word that it would work at all. You can obviously see the bigger versions of it. Very, very cool. And of course you can see in the larger Pan Am, you can actually read that. It's well done on that, but it's way too big. So that little circle there is going to be fine to go on the sides, the back. I still have to paint in the black in the engine. I'm going to try to paint on the wing front leading edges, just a little dab of black for the intakes along them. We'll see. A little bit of maybe some black scorching like behind that little panel there. Maybe a little bit of yellow in for the window in the front of the cockpit. But other than that, I think these decals will really make this pop and really look a lot like the clipper in the poster in the film. So okay, let me go ahead and get those put onto it, do a little bit of painting, and then we'll see how that's going to look for this build. All right, and here is my completed super tiny Space Clipper Orion, the decals on it. I added a little bit of the black marks around the fuselage there and on the wing tips, just some slight little marks. A little bit of clear yellow for the cockpit window just to make it stand out just a little bit. I didn't want it to be dark though. I did put the decals on the bottom. They just seem kind of, sorry, focus. They just seem kind of dull and plain because that's all that's there. But you're not gonna, it's gonna be rotating, but it's gonna look fine. You're gonna see the whole thing like this, rotating around. Very happy with how that turned out. I think it looks really cool. And then when you get the iconic, shot of it kind of facing downward from the station. It's definitely gonna spark that image of the clipper with all the different things on it. So, all right, very, very cool. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it from this. I had glued it in temporarily, but I'm going to take it back out, and I'm going to start working on the part of the metal rod that's going to be the exhaust for it to disguise the metal rod. I do have some tiny little lights that I showed previously. I'm going to try to work on those. And ultimately, if they don't work, that's fine. If I just have the cotton, very thin layer of cotton to make it look like there's the exhaust so you don't see the brass rod. A few people have suggested a clear rod. First of all, mine's out a lot further than what I've seen other people use. And then it's going to be rotating, so I just don't want it to be wobbling. But it won't matter anyway because I'm going to have it covered. So I don't want it to look like there's nothing behind it. I do want it to show the exhaust like it does in the poster. So, okay. All right. I'm very, very happy with how that's turned out. All right, so as you saw from the previous stills, I wrapped the wires with the little SMDs around the brass rod, and then I applied some cotton over it. It looks a little more blended in the camera, but it's pretty spotty. In real life, you can see the SMDs sticking through. So. And like I said, ultimately, I don't have to go with the lights. Plus, I have an issue with the lights. One of them keeps blinking on and off. Can't really see it, that little dark spot right there, but it's not lighting up. One in the back isn't lit up either. So I contacted Evan Designs to get that replaced. But before I do that, I want to try to test one other idea to see if I can get that to work. A friend of mine, Phil, was over to visit today. He lives nearby, and I was showing it to him. He suggested airbrushing some white paint over top of it, and I'm going to give that a try just to see. I don't want it to be yellow like fire or red or anything like that, or even black like it's scorched. It looks white in the poster, so I'm going to try just some white paint over top of it. If I can get it to be more even looking, then we'll kind of go with that. And then that way, once I get my replacement lights, I can go ahead and take these ones off and put the good ones on. So, okay, let me give that a shot, and then we'll test it and see if that works for what I'm trying to do. All right, so I painted over the cotton. I didn't show any more images of it. It really didn't help. The lights were just too close to the cotton. Unless the cotton is thicker and covers it, it's going to come through as a light. So, and then I tried unwrapping the lights and making them a little tighter, but they ended up just stopped working altogether because I obviously the fine magnet wire and I'm removing them from this tube and it didn't really work well. So I might come back to that, but for right now, what I've done is I've taken some fiber fill, which has more of strands in it. It looks more like an exhaust, and I wrapped it around it going in the direction of the strands. And then once I got it on there fairly tightly, I went over it with the lighter like this and just kind of burned off a little bits of pieces lightly. I'm doing this on camera, so it's not going to look right. and it tightened it down around the rod. So it's not perfect. I'd have to play with that a little bit to get a better result, but I think that looks pretty cool. That might accomplish what I'm trying to do with just looking like there's some exhaust coming from behind it. But probably not going to go with the lights just because they don't really add anything to it, and it wouldn't be lit up anyway. We never really see any lights in the engines of the ships, of any of the ships in the film. But I did want to reproduce this exhaust plume like it is on the poster. But again, it's not burning, it's not fire. It looks like a white exhaust, just giving you the impression, because it's a painting, of course, of it coming out of the space station and having some exhaust that you can see. So I'll play with it, but I'll come up with something on it ultimately to make it look accurate. But I'm really happy with the space clipper and how that looks. All right, so I tried a few other things as far as trying to make the exhaust. I decided not to do the lights after all. I did contact Evan Designs, and they're a great company. I really love working with them. They sent me out a new set. Now, when I first got the set and opened it, one of the SMDs didn't light up. There were 12 of them, but when I put it onto the rod, another one started failing. And then what they basically said, which I didn't really think about, is I put it on the metal rod. And some of these, you know, if the soldering point makes contact, it's going to short it out and it's going to mess it up. So that wasn't really a great idea to begin with. But again, they're a great company and they're definitely stand by their products 100%. But in any case, the lights weren't really looking good. They were looking too sourcey, and obviously putting them on a metal rod isn't a good idea after all. So I'm just going to go with this cotton. And all I did was put some more of that the grass mat glue onto it. Put down some cotton. I tried some of that cotton-like material that you get for Halloween that makes like the spider webs, and it was more of a strand, but that didn't work out. I showed that earlier. I couldn't get it to look right, and it didn't do what I wanted it to do. I tried a couple different applications. Ultimately, this cotton is the best. I just stretched it out a bit, glued it down, and I think it'll look just fine. All right, let me go ahead and try to get this mocked up, and none of this is glued together. I'm just kind of holding it in place. Let me get this mocked up into the ship, and I'll kind of show you how that's going to look with the lights and the docking bay. All right, so I'm just kind of mocking it up. I started painting the station, so just ignore that. That'll be in the next video. But I just wanted to kind of show this with the lights on. And some of the lights are yellowish because I have tape holding it in. It's not glued in permanently. This isn't the part that I'll be using. But you can see that's pretty cool. You got the cotton going back in, and it's not positioned correctly, by the way, too. I'm just kind of holding it in place with my finger. But that'll be coming out like that, giving us the impression that it has an exhaust coming out behind it. And it doesn't really obscure the docking bay, which is good. You'll be able to see in there and see the lights, as you can see. It's kind of hard to get too close, but you can get an idea. All right, so I think that's going to work. I think the cotton's going to work, and it doesn't have to be lit up. That's going to be the iconic image of it shooting out of the station. So, okay. All right, so I have a few more things to finish up before I'm ready to glue the space clipper into the docking bay and finish getting that light blocked as well. But definitely a really good result coming up with that.
All right, so that's going to wrap up this video on the second part of this build. I often like to leave in parts that I end up not going with, such as the lights for the exhaust and how that didn't quite work out, and some mistakes that I make, just to kind of show, obviously, I don't always get it right every time. I don't think any of us do. And it's okay to try something and fail at it, and then later on go back and say, hey, yeah, that was kind of a bonehead move. That wasn't a good idea to look at. So we all do that, and in a lot of these extra things that I do to my ships are all trial and error oftentimes. I learned from previous experiences, and I use the same techniques that were successful in other ones, but sometimes a lot of models just give you a new challenge that you try to do something that you haven't done before. So don't be afraid to try that, and if you make a mistake and it doesn't work, you start over, just tear it out, do it again, and rebuild it. So, but really happy with the progress of the model, and continuing work on it, as you saw from the previous videos. I started doing some painting to light block it, so we'll go over that in the next video. All right, well, thank you to all my new subscribers, and I will see you in the next video.